Today we are taking a look at Graham Platner's natal chart. I've actually been curious about his chart for a while, even though I don't know too much about him other than what I hear on the news. Just the way things have played out recently made me even more curious, especially since the timing was just so close to the Mars-Uranus conjunction. So I decided to take a little peek and see if there was anything in the chart that maybe could give some insight, and there definitely was something there. So here's the chart, and unfortunately, we don't know his birth time, so I'm just using noon, which is pretty standard. And before anyone comes at me, yes, that puts Scorpio on the ascendant, which has its own implications, but I have no way to know if this is accurate or not. So we're just gonna ignore that part of it right now. We're gonna ignore the houses, and I've also left the moon out of the chart because with using noon as the birth time, the moon falls right on the cusp between Scorpio and Sagittarius, so I don't think we can really know for sure which sign that's in either. We're just going to leave it out for now. Okay, so let's get into what's actually going on in his chart because there's a lot here. Now, the first thing that jumps out at me is this T-square, which I'm going to isolate for you here. So if you're not familiar, the T-square is when you've got two planets in opposition and then a third planet squaring both of them, kind of creating tension in the chart. And the third point becomes the pressure valve. And this pressure valve is like constantly trying to balance the opposing energies. And so for Graham Platner, the opposition is Chiron in Gemini against Mars and loosely Uranus in Sagittarius, which is already like this really mentally oriented sort of belief versus information kind of axis. And squaring these and acting as the focal point is the Sun in Virgo, which kind of brings this kind of need for refinement and kind of to be right, useful, prove confidence, and kind of to be in the service of something. Let's talk a bit more about the Virgo Sun focal point. So the Sun represents your core self. It's how you're initially perceived by the world. It's your conscious mind. So this is a very visible position, and it like the energetic tension it receives from the other two planets can be seen, especially by those close to him. So the opposition is literally shaping his identity. Now, the Virgo energy is perfectionism in an idealistic sense. It believes in a higher purpose, and this higher purpose is what guides their morality. So Virgo is also appreciate organized thought, and it wants to be useful. I personally find that Virgo energy often does okay in a square, even though it doesn't like it, because it can't help but want to refine its image. Okay, let's have a look at the Chiron in Gemini energy. Now, I know I've mentioned this before, but Chiron represents our core wound, which, if we work with it, leaves a scar that can become a place of strength or like a means to heal ourselves and others. So with Chiron in Gemini, the wound is often around kind of like not feeling like you or your ideas are being heard. Like Gemini is constantly processing information. And with Chiron here, Gemini runs the risk of feeling either misunderstood or overlooked, or just like their viewpoints do not matter. So the phrase, you don't know what you're talking about, something like that is going to be very triggering for a Chiron in Gemini placement. So on the other side of this opposition is Mars in Sagittarius. Now, this placement fits very well with what I understand Graham Platner's political views represent and the way he's handled his campaign. I don't know how accurate that is, but so let me explain. Sagittarius can be passionate and optimistic, and Mars is associated with like action and initiation. So this placement is often described as like a happy warrior or kind of something like that. They're not afraid of conflict, and they are more than willing to take a stand for what they believe in. And here's where it gets interesting. With Uranus only 1 degree away from Mars, bringing kind of an element of unpredictability to the mix, like a preference to act without restrictions. Uranus does not like to follow rules. So I wouldn't say we could call Graham like a happy rebellious warrior, but maybe like happy maverick might be accurate. When we look at this in opposition to the Chiron in Gemini, we get a highly sensitive pain axis. And this can indicate an individual with a powerful belief system and a fierce willingness to stand up for it, even though they frequently also feel deeply belittled for doing so. So when we add the sun in Virgo as the square or focal point, it creates a that's where the tension is. So when their ideas are challenged, the natural instinct for the Virgo sun is to fix it. The problem with that is this may cause like a knee-jerk reaction, and if the individual is acting from that, they're going to lash out or act offensively in order to protect their ego, their sun. So the quote unquote medicine offered by the Virgo sun, which really, really wants to just be seen in a positive light and to be helpful to the world, is to use Virgo's sort of like objective clarity and ability to organize thought to reevaluate and potentially adjust their perspectives when necessary. This is a really hard configuration for a Virgo sun because the core drive for perfection is constantly being confronted with deep-seated feelings of insecurity. However, like all challenging placements, it does offer profound opportunity for growth if you can learn to consciously navigate the conflicting energies. Let's look a little bit at what was happening in the sky when all this came to a head. So when the newest allegations broke on Monday, July 6th, regarding Graham Platner, transiting Mars was within 3 degrees of his natal Chiron. And this conjunction became exact on Friday, right around the time when he announced he was suspending his campaign. At the same time, transiting Mars directly opposed his natal Mars, meaning his T-square was like fully activated. And for me, the timing is incredibly interesting because it closely coincided with the Mars-Uranus conjunction in the early hours of July 4th. Now, a lot of astrologers, myself included, were looking at America's natal chart and wondering what was going to unfold, just given what has happened historically when Mars and Uranus conjoin in Gemini, especially regarding the States. And right on the heels of that alignment, this situation starts unfolding, and suddenly we have an American politician with a Mars-Uranus conjunction, a little bit loose, but it's still there, dominating the news. And when I think about Platner's own words about suspending his campaign, he said, "We're doing it because of the structures that are being taken away from us by those in power." That feels like a key point. Now, I know some people read that as narcissistic or whatever, and that's a fair take, but however you think of the framing, that language, power, structures, and what's being taken away, it's consistent with themes that come up under Mars-Uranus conjunction. So I think this is going to be part of a story that this axis keeps telling, and one we're likely to see again. I know that this is a highly consequential riding, and Platner was projected to flip the seat from Republican to Democrat. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out over the next 7 years or so, because there's going to be 3 more Mars-Uranus conjunctions between now and 2032. So I think this is going to be a critical space to watch. I'd love to know what you guys think of this timing and the Mars-Uranus connection to the US chart. Feel free to drop your insights below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will catch you all next time.